I am New York.
Ya sam New York.
I am New York.
Yo soy Nueva York.
Sono New York.
Je suis New York.
Welcome to Diverse City, where we explore New York's eclectic enclaves, one neighborhood at a time. I'm Zyphus Lebrun. This month we're heading to Flushing, Queens. The multicultural and majority middle-class community is home to the city's largest Chinatown. Many who live there call it the Chinese Manhattan. It's estimated that Asians account for just over 69% of the area's population, Hispanics for 14.9%, whites 9.2%, and African Americans 4.2%. City statistics show that more than half of the area's population was born outside of the United States. Similar to many other neighborhoods in the city, Flushing is experiencing a wave of gentrification, but there's a difference here. It's wealthy Chinese immigrants bringing in multinational dollars and Chinese American developers erecting luxury buildings that are having a significant impact. Many mom and pop shops are being displaced, changing the enclave's cultural and culinary landscape. On this episode, Flushing Overflow, the ominous truth beneath the surface of this beloved creek. The People's Plan, resisting a major redevelopment plan that may price out longtime residents. And Queens Cuisines, an affordable option to indulge in some of Queens's diverse dining. Those stories and more coming up as we explore Flushing, Queens. Flushing Bay and Creek are havens for kayakers, jet skiers, canoers, and even the occasional picnickers. But the creek, that's very picturesque on the surface, hides an ugly truth below. We get some of the details from Vanessa Monet.
Flushing Bay, an inlet off the south side of the East River, is close to Rebecca Pryor's heart. Pryor is the New York City Civics and Stewardship Manager for the nonprofit environmental organization Riverkeeper. She's also the newly named Executive Director of Guardians of Flushing Bay. The group is a coalition of boaters and community members who are advocating for the health of and equal access to the bay. She says that the highly utilized waterways of Flushing Bay and Flushing Creek are far from clean.
All of New York City gets 20 billion gallons of combined sewage overflow, which is basically all of the water in your home. So in your sink, in your bathtub, in your toilet, goes into the same system. So when it rains, as all of the water that comes down onto the street, the system gets overwhelmed. It can't all get processed by the wastewater treatment plant, and it overflows into New York City water bodies. So that is combined sewage overflow.
Flushing Bay and Flushing Creek take in 2 billion gallons of that overflow, or CSO. That accounts for 10% of the entire city, which is pretty massive for just one water body. Originating as a wetland, which served as a productive ecological habitat and filtered impurities from the water, Flushing Bay and Flushing Creek have seen their share of industrial pollution on top of the CSO that regularly enters the waterways.
In the early 1900s, it had become the Corona coal ash dump. And so it was a vast coal ash dump. And then Robert Moses in the 1939 World's Fair, he was like, let's turn this area into a World's Fair. So 1939, also 1964 World's Fair, the area really transformed into a totally different landscape.
That landscape and the people who use it are now being threatened by the high levels of untreated sewage in the waterways. Cody Herman is an artist and board member of Guardians of Flushing Bay. The group started in 2015 as a bunch of dragon boaters, some of whom were breast cancer survivors. They made a terrible discovery that led them to take action.
So while they were out paddling in Flushing Bay, which is one of the best places for dragon boating in the tri-state area, they began to get rashes and eye infections and wondered like, hey, why is this happening to us? They already had a compromised immune system from going through cancer treatment.
Herman is a Flushing native. She says that bringing people to the waterway is a big part of how they create awareness about the issue.
It's a lot harder to get people to care about something if they've never seen it, never touched it, never engaged with it. So whether it's kind of just hosting a cleanup or some type of art event on the shoreline of Flushing Bay, it's really about getting people there, getting them to see things up close and understand the problems at hand. And, just that awareness is going to ultimately impact water quality. When city officials have more people sending in comments, sending in testimony about their plans in and around Flushing Bay and Creek, they begin to be held to a higher standard when more people are watching.
The city has not cast a completely blind eye to the issue. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP, developed plans for both Flushing Bay and Flushing Creek that were approved by New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation, or DEC. However, things have gotten off to a rocky start. When reached for an update on the status of the Flushing Bay and Flushing Creek long-term control plans, DEP provided a statement that read in part, "The once-in-a-century COVID-19 pandemic and shutdowns that followed had a cascading impact across society, keeping people from working and paying bills, amongst other things. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection saw a significant reduction in New Yorkers paying their water or sewer bills in a timely manner, which has resulted in delays in many capital projects. An updated Flushing Bay CSO tunnel project timeline is currently under negotiations with New York State Department of Environmental Conservation." That project, though, may still not be the answer. Pryor says that the DEP plan for Flushing Creek was to chlorinate the waterway without reducing CSO levels. Many advocates don't think that this addresses the main issue. While on the other hand, Flushing Bay's long-term control plan is much more extensive. Amongst other components, it was meant to include the construction of a CSO storage tunnel that would prevent roughly 50% of the current CSO volume from entering the bay.
With all of that said, we were very disappointed that the project was stalled. This had huge benefits potentially for Flushing Bay. You can already see this. Flushing Bay was dredged a few years ago, and DEP put in wetlands that have actually done tremendously well. So you can already see that nature wants to come back. It's ready to take hold.
For Diverse City, I'm Vanessa Monet.
Main Street and Roosevelt Avenue in Flushing is the third busiest pedestrian intersection in the city, after Times and Herald Square, and the area is only getting busier. The Municipal Arts Society of New York is a non-profit that advocates for better urban planning. It reports that in the last decade, downtown Flushing experienced more condominium growth than any neighborhood except for Williamsburg, Brooklyn. In the wake of that, local advocates are trying to create a community-led plan they say is more in the neighborhood's interest. Shannon Ayala tells us more.
Flushing needs protection from these high rises that are going up, from these large-scale developments. It's really out of place.
Tensions surrounding rapid development in downtown Flushing peaked late last year when the City Council approved a land use application for the Special Flushing Waterfront District. Developers who had bought up most of the 29 acres of gritty waterfront property on the Flushing Creek say the neighborhood is getting a good deal. They promise an environmental cleanup, waterfront access, privately funded streets, and lots of jobs. But Sarah Ahn of the labor nonprofit Flushing Worker Center says there were other visions for Flushing.
We want, all of the things that, the developers were saying that they would provide, but it was at the cost of, building another, over 2,000 condos in our community.
5 years ago, there was a city-led rezoning plan for the waterfront that would have required 20% affordable housing, but it was scrapped. In its place came the idea from a consortium of 3 developers who proposed building 1,700 apartments, only 90 of which would be affordable housing. Opponents say these luxury buildings would cause rents to go up even higher for many struggling immigrants in the community.
People have coped and dealt with it by, doubling up, tripling up in apartments. We have a lot of seniors in Flushing. Flushing is a very, immigrant-heavy community, and there's a lot of people who, want to stay close to, their doctors, to the services, just the things that people need. Also, that's accessible in the language that they speak.
According to the 2019 Census American Community Survey, the Greater Downtown Flushing zip code 11354 has a median household income of only $40,000. Many residents live in rent-stabilized housing that observers say is being bought up by transnational investors who will flip those homes.
We all know what's happening, right? We all know that our rents are too high, that our taxes are too high, that our small businesses are being forced to close down because of the rising rent, so how do we stop that, right? And how does the community come up with its own solutions to stop that and have them be actually listened to, by those who say they represent us.
Joe Sweeney is one of those representatives. He's been on Community Board 7 for 35 years. He says that even if the community had rejected the plan, the developers could still build as of right, meaning without public review.
They would build and design as of right and do what they want. No voice, no communication from the community whatsoever. However, they came to us and said, look, we'd like to combine this particular district in the area.
But Tari Hum, chair of urban studies at Queens College and an outspoken critic of the special district, says the developer's proposal included way more than could be done as of right.
The special district, if you read it, the proposal, it includes so many necessary waivers and other adjustments, waivers and adjustments in terms of the zoning rules, that it wasn't possible to really develop the site as of right.
An says they also feel betrayed by their outgoing city council member, Peter Koo.
Councilmember Koo, he never met with us. He never met with any of the organizations that had issues. He had the pandemic sort of to hide behind.
Koo's office said he couldn't comment because of an ongoing lawsuit the Min Kwan Center and other groups filed against the Planning Department and Planning Commission. The suit argues that the city unjustly concluded that the zoning proposal would have no significant negative environmental impact on the area. We reached out to the consortium and its lawyer for comment, to no avail. One of the developers, Flushing-based FNT Group, adds an additional twist to the story.
Actually, one of the things that the developers love to say the most is that they're also from the community, right? FNT Group, which was the biggest developer, they would talk a lot about how, they're also Chinese and they're homegrown in Flushing, So it does beg the question, right? They're not lying, right? But then who is the community and what do we mean when we, talk about the community's interests?
The Flushing Anti-Displacement Alliance, FADA, made up of veteran opponents of the special district, is working on a community-based district plan of their own.
Right, so this is commercial, change it to these zoning codes.
So oftentimes, these rezonings are proposed by developers or proposed by the city, but, again, in close partnership with developers. So why not have a rezoning plan that is put forth by the community, right? We are ultimately the ones who have to live here, who have to, make our lives here, and we make the community as well.
FADA's community-led plan would cover all of downtown Flushing and establish new rules for future development from the community's point of view. Developers say the special district could be finished as early as 2025. Shannon Ayala for Diverse City.
The Queens Night Market is once again up and running after COVID-19 shut them down last year. As Craig Thompson reports, the venue is providing New Yorkers with something unique.
Spin the globe and stop your finger, stop it with your finger, and there's probably, we probably have food from there. Our mission is idealistic and probably unattainable as it is to have a vendor for every country that's represented in New York City.
John Wang started the Queens Night Market in 2014. It's modeled after similar markets in Taiwan and elsewhere. He says a big part of pitching the market initially was explaining what it is.
It's got different energy, and the way people interact is different, and we try to curate this thing where people stick around and sort of dabble, try food from lots of places, mingle, get to know their neighbors, that kind of thing.
Alyssa Myers is one of the vendors at the market. She owns Black Orchid Kitchen, a restaurant that celebrates the food of her home country, Belize.
All of these things are things that were sold in my grandmother's shop. We make our conch fritters, which are pretty much our signature. It's kind of what we're getting to be known for out on the street. Everybody's talking about it. It's basically conchs, which is a shellfish, the little guy that you hold up to your ear and you can hear the ocean. It's the guy that lives in there. And we grind it up with onions and peppers and habanero, which is basically in everything we eat. And just, simple. You season it a little bit and we fry it up crispy, and it's just a cuisine that people don't know about, and it's super, super delicious.
Belizean food is just one option. There are dishes from Tibet, the Philippines, Brazil, Mexico, the list goes on. What sets it apart from other food bazaars in the city is that, with a few exceptions, all the dishes are priced at $5 or $6.
The idea for the Queens Night Market, it was really, can you make New York's most affordable public space? Can you create New York City's most accessible and affordable event, and what would that look like?
Johnson Hu, a Flushing resident who sells his take on Taiwanese popcorn chicken at his bistro stall, appreciates the return of the market after the pandemic forced its closure last year.
Most importantly is to see people back there. I just love to see people coming to the store, getting the satisfaction of getting some nice food.
The organizers have been seeing 15,000 people a night this year.
The people that have come, had bought tickets to come, have just been spending more money and time than we've ever seen at the Queens Night Market, which is great for vendors. Vendors have been selling out super early, and occasionally the lines get super long.
After last summer's cancellation of the market, these long lineups are welcome. This year's market runs through October 30th. For Diverse City, I'm Craig Thompson.
The first building ever to be landmarked in Queens was Kingsland Homestead in Flushing. As Crystal Lowe found out, the building that was constructed more than 230 years ago has more history than you might think.
Kingsland Homestead was built in 1785 by a Quaker named Charles Doughty. In 1801, Doughty sold the house to his son-in-law, a British sea captain named Joseph King. The name Kingsland is a derivative of Captain King's name.
It's a Long Island half house, which is a form of vernacular architecture, which means that it's a local style. It combines a bit of Dutch influence and English influence, but it's characterized by a big hallway on one side and then rooms all on the side rather than it being symmetrical.
Jaron Halfpap is the caretaker and education and outreach coordinator at Kingsland Homestead. He says the building was the first to be landmarked in Queens back in 1965.
But then shortly after that, it was also being threatened by development. So the Kingsland Preservation Committee was formed by community members to try and preserve the house and make sure that it wouldn't be threatened by development, which involved picking the house up and moving it on a truck down the street.
That wasn't the first time the house was moved. In the early 1920s, Kingsland was moved to a nearby stable owned by Captain King in order to avoid the proposed expansion of the New York City subway line into Flushing. In 1968, the Kingsland Preservation Committee, which is now the Queens Historical Society, successfully rallied to have the house moved to its final location in Weeping Beach Park.
The Weeping Beach was another landmark It was a living landmark, one of only 2 in the city. So the house was placed on that parkland so that way it couldn't be threatened by further development. It would have protection because developers wouldn't be able to develop on parkland.
Sadly, after living for 151 years, the original landmark weeping beech tree died in 1998. A funeral was held for the tree, and Kingsland Homestead added slices of the tree's remains to its collection. In 1971, the house underwent extensive restoration work and was officially opened to the public as a museum in 1973.
The building is not landmarked on the inside. It's only landmarked on the outside, which affords the Queens Historical Society a certain amount of leeway in what we do with the inside of the building. On one hand, we like to preserve the building, but on the other, we like to use the building for kind of a living, breathing exhibit space.
The Historical Society recently rendered that space digitally in an effort to make the museum more accessible to the elderly and to allow for tours during the COVID lockdown.
And so I created a part of our website for people to kind of walk around the house in a VR space.
The museum has an archive, a research library, an art collection, and a Victorian parlor room that is styled after the 1870s post-war Reconstruction era. HalfPap says it's designed that way so that visitors can get a glimpse into what a middle-class family home may have looked like during that time period. He also adds that the museum works hard to represent the rich history of Queens, and not simply its Anglo-Saxon heritage. Crystal Lowe for Diversity.
Finally from us, football is booming in Flushing. So much so that a new professional team, Queensborough FC, will make the area their home in 2022. The sport's popularity is being reflected in the growing number of academies emerging to hone the skills of young men and women hungry to play the game. These clubs are bringing new opportunities to many kids from immigrant families.
Beautiful cross, man! Football is life!
Though Danny Rojas may be a fictional character from the popular Apple Plus show Ted Lasso, his sentiment about the game is very real. That sort of passion often plays out on football pitches like this one in Flushing, Queens. These young men play for Villarreal NY Bolaños Soccer Academy. The club is one of many privately run academies that call the area home. NY Bolaños started in 1994 when the World Cup was held in the US. The club's co-owner and director, Yair Bolaños, says the cup sparked an interest in the game that has never waned.
Back in the days when we started it, Flushing Middle Park, from the park, they will call you and say, listen, are you going to renew your permit? Are you coming to get it? We have it here. You want us to send you the permit to your house? You want to come and pick it out? Now, if you take 5 days or you don't renew your permit, somebody else will take it.
The academies have grown so much that some of them use commercials like this to attract new players who range from ages 5 to 17. Bolaños' success caught the attention of the Spanish first-tier team Villarreal, who lent their name to the club and started up a partnership.
What they do is they try to give us the methodology that they use in Spain. The whole purpose of this is that one of these kids, eventually, one day they go to Spain and play for the professional team.
Even before they make it to the big leagues, Bolaños says these players are now being courted by bigger schools.
These coaches from the suburbs, they'll come down here and start watching talent, and they will say, listen, I'll give you a scholarship. I'll give you a free, you don't have to pay it. And then that's how they get all these good kids over there too. So it's competition. That's part of, that's part of the game.
It's not only boys getting to play. Leslie Calderon Vera started Chicas Girls 4 years ago to create a more affordable option for young women of color in the area. It was also a means of protecting them from the teenage boys whose physical style of play had become an intimidation tactic.
There were some really tough games that we watched and it was like, okay, it's either going to be someone's going to come, going to get upset at, one of my girls, like keeping up with them and hurting them.
One of those girls was defender Stacey Avendano, who was just recruited by the Division II school, Mercy College.
It was just like really crazy, just I'm over here like trying to find schools, like thinking it's gonna be like this big thing, and then it's like schools are coming at me, especially with the help of Leslie. Now that we're playing at a level that like college are coming to look at us and pick us out. So instead of me being like, oh, like which college wants me, it's more like, oh my God, which college do I actually want to go to?
The three-time world champions take on
Calderon Vera says the U.S. women's national team's World Cup victory in 2019 has set the stage for academies like hers.
Funds are being distributed to women in soccer. So it's like, it's a huge opportunity now, and which is great.
As for Bolaños, he says that COVID-19 delayed players going to Spain for training last year. However, he expects that if things go well, he'll soon send 2 or 3 of them over to Spain. That's our look at Flushing, Queens. Join us next month when we'll head over to Coney Island in Brooklyn. Till then, thanks for joining us as we explore our diverse city.